And for the fourth year in a row, I get the honor and privilege of co-chairing the Cancer Clinical Trials Conference with Stephanie and with Winston. As head of innovation for Roche Canada across our three companies, Roche Pharmaceuticals, Roche Diagnostics, and Roche Diabetes Care, I get a front row seat in seeing the revolution, the innovations, and the transformation of not only the cancer clinical trials environment, but of our entire healthcare system. Now, we've had a remarkable past 2 years in dealing with unprecedented challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, but we're now coming out of it. We're coming out of it stronger than ever, more collaborative than ever, with more clarity to what is required to create a healthcare system that is more resilient, more human-centered, and capable of delivering unprecedented value to patients. I'm very excited about this year's agenda because it speaks to all of this. It speaks to the future of clinical trials, it speaks to the future of the industry, and it speaks to the future of healthcare and the promise that the healthcare system will be better than ever with more innovation, more adoption than ever, and more access for patients than ever. We hope that you enjoy the content and the next 2 days as much as we enjoyed putting it together. And with that, I'd like to welcome you to the conference and hope you have a wonderful next 2 days with us. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Michaud, and I am President and CEO of BioCanRx, Canada's immunotherapy network. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to you all alongside my co-chairs, Dr. Winston Chung and Dr. Michael Duong, to this year's 5th annual Patient Group Pathway Model to Accessing Clinical Trials and Real-World Evidence Conference organized by Colorectal Cancer Canada. This year's conference will cover over 2 days the latest in innovation with respect to precision medicine and how this is driving transformation with respect to the execution of clinical trials. Most importantly, it will gather the voices of thought leaders from across Canada and from across different sectors. We'll hear, of course, from the pharmaceutical sector, but also not-for-profits that are dedicated to accelerating the development of therapies to the clinic by providing more rapid access to clinical trials. The theme of this year's conference is revolution, transformation, and innovation. And I promise you that at the end of the 2 days, you will leave having learned a great deal about how all of these groups are working to create real value for Canadian patients.
Hi, everyone. My name is Winston Chung, and I'm a medical oncologist in Calgary. I'm also the Director of Real-World Evidence for Cancer Care Alberta and the Oncology Outcomes, or O2 initiative in the province. It's my real pleasure to be co-chairing this year's meeting with Michael and Stephanie. As in previous years, this year's conference agenda is jam-packed full of great speakers and great topics, covering the spectrum of data sciences, artificial intelligence, patient engagement, and better and more effective ways of conducting clinical trials. Over the last 18 months or so, we've all learned a lot from the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's really reminded us the importance of being strategic, creative, innovative, and also deliberate in the way we tackle problems and the way we answer questions, and also how we analyze data. With that in mind, many of the speakers over the course of this conference will tap into these themes. I, for one, am looking forward to many of these talks, and I know you will too. Thank you so much for joining us this year.
Welcome, everybody, and good afternoon. And apologies for the technical difficulties that seem to have occurred due to the storms out west. Thank you, Stephanie Michaud, Winston Chung, and Michael Duong for your warm opening remarks and for participating as co-chairs in this year's milestone 5th Annual Clinical Trials Conference. Your work in cancer clinical trials and your devotion to cancer patients and patient centricity in clinical trials has inspired our collective work and is reflected in this year's conference. This conference builds upon the experience of our 4 previous clinical trial conferences, as well as the ongoing work of the patient-centered approach to cancer clinical trials working group, PACT as we call it, in between our conferences, and our commitment to furthering patient centricity in cancer trials in Canada. Stay tuned for further developments by our wonderful PACT working group in the coming year. The theme of this year's conference is Revolution, Innovation, and Transformation of Cancer Trials in Canada, reflecting the revolution, innovation, and transformation in the way clinical trials were carried out to bring us life-saving vaccines in a record-breaking speed during the pandemic. If we can maintain the inertia realized during the pandemic, we can also transform the way clinical trials are initiated and carried out to bring earlier access to effective treatments to cancer patients. We must maintain that sense of urgency to accomplish these goals. Some of you might wonder why Colorectal Cancer Canada has undertaken to do the work that we are carrying out in the field of cancer clinical trials. As you may know, participation in cancer trials in Canada is strikingly low, ranging from 2 to 7% across the country. If cancer patients are to benefit from early access to new and effective treatments, we must act collectively to ensure patients have access to clinical trials that investigate new precision medicines and immunotherapies with endpoints that are important to them. Many Canadians may not realize that clinical trials are one of the key ways that patients currently gain access to new cancer therapies, and that without these trials, many patients would be deprived of the opportunity to gain early access to new drugs while contributing to cancer research benefiting all Canadians. I know this personally because I was once one of those lucky patients who participated in clinical trials to access life-saving therapy. Cancer clinical trials must also be modernized to keep up with the innovations in drug development and new trial modalities needed to accommodate these innovations as we identify smaller and smaller subgroups of patients who can benefit from precision medicines, immunotherapies, and other emerging discoveries. We must also develop new real-world evidence frameworks that will enable our regulatory and health technology assessment bodies, among others, to follow up on the effectiveness of these drugs through the collection of real-world data. Furthermore, we must encourage investment in life sciences in Canada, as well as public-private partnerships to ensure a fertile foundation for investment in the development of new drugs so that Canadians can benefit from these new technologies in a timely manner. COVID-19 has taught us that if we neglect our investments in this area, it will be to the detriment of all cancer patients, and indeed all Canadians. It showed us how building trust and collaboration between researchers and between public and private entities can rapidly advance innovation to our mutual benefit. We believe that patients and patient groups play an essential role in the ideation and development of cancer trials, as well as their role throughout the entire clinical trial continuum. It is our collective responsibility to do everything possible to ensure that patients have equitable access to trials so that we can continue to reduce the incidence and mortality from cancer and improve the quality of life of patients. I hope that you enjoy this year's conference as much as we did preparing for it. I know you will find it not only inspirational, but provide additional insight into the revolution, innovation, and transformation of cancer trials in Canada. I would like to thank our wonderful speakers and panelists who will engage in thoughtful discussion with a view to enhancing the future of clinical trials in Canada. Thank you to all of our dedicated staff who made it happen. Thank you for your patience during our technical difficulties. And of course, thank you to our generous sponsors, without whom our work in cancer trials would not be possible. Now delighted to introduce our wonderful facilitator, Anne-Marie Wright, who will introduce the objectives of the conference, as well as our very special keynote speaker, Mr. Greg Simon. Anne-Marie?